some of the guys on the video here, look over here, right here. Some of the guys on the video that are watching it, I mean, they want to see you. Yeah. Some of my viewers, some of you guys, I don't know, you just really like my dog, so I like to show them off every once in a while. I'm recording this on Saturday morning, and all is good in the world, isn't it? At least in our little piece of the world. So let's get you down, Bandit. There you go. Thanks for watching. My name's Jake. Today we're taking a look at the Desert Fox by HARNDS, and I'm sorry for hitting the camera tripod right there. It's a full tang knife, a stainless steel Chinesium, but half decent steel for a budget knife. G10 handle scales, big, thick, heavy handle scales. It's a fairly weighty knife, and you know, it's good for those kinds of weighty tasks. What kind of knife is this? It's a knife that cuts things. I'm not all that into making strict delineations between survival knives and tactical knives and outdoor knives and bushcraft knives, and you know, there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, you know, this type of knife is, you know, if you want a big bladed knife, almost 5 inches, and you know, big heavy handle, and you want something heavy duty that's stainless steel and you're on a tight budget, well, this is one of the things that you could consider getting. Made by HARNDS, the Desert Fox. If you're interested at all, stick around for the full review coming at you right now. So there you go, the HARNDS Desert Fox and the sheath that comes with. The leather for the sheath is certainly not high grade, but it's not the worst leather I've experienced either. It's a fairly decent leather. You can see they put the name, they embossed it on the leather right there. They used a proper snap, and they, you know, had the extra expense of getting snaps made with their logo on it, the H right there. And you know, the side protection here for on the side of your pants, belt loop here. I do wish this belt loop was a little bit heavier duty leather, a little bit thicker. Riveted on in both spots, holds quite well. And you've got this extra section that they've put on here as well. I asked for ideas of what this is for, and some people suggested a few things. I don't think I'd ever use it though, but it's on there, and if I took it off, it's just going to leave holes, so it's on there. There is no drain hole on the bottom, so I still haven't decided yet if I'm going to be selling this on or keeping it. If I decide to keep it, maybe if I sell it on anyways, I should put a little hole down on the bottom here in case somebody uses it out in the moisture and rain or something. You want the water to be able to drain out. Even though it is a stainless steel blade, that's a good idea. Now, what kind of steel do we have here? We've got 9CR18 MOV, which is, you know, a half decent budget steel, but it definitely is a budget steel. It's not super great or anything. It's a little better than 8CR13, but not by a huge margin. We've got, well, I'll put this aside for now. The leather sheath is okay. We do have a pretty decent handle. I do like that an awful lot. And you can get this in 3 different colors. This is called the green and yellow, and you can get it just in a all green. It's a fairly dark OD green kind of color. It does have different colors here on the seam, even on the green version. And then you've got a yellow version, which has yellow and cream colored G10 combined. And I was really tempted to get that one, but I decided to get this one because of the high contrast here. I tend to put things down and not remember where I put them, and I figured this would be a little bit more eye-catching to find it when I needed to find it. And that's why I chose this color. Now, it's got pins on here using screws. I'll show you close-ups of them. There you go, that have those holes in them. So you need a little spanner tool, but you need a spanner tool that's got a wide span for the pins, and then the pins have to be fairly small, and I suspect they probably used an epoxy on here anyways. I would not suggest trying to take this knife apart. I just would not suggest it. Now you can see on the handle here, the full tang of the blade going all the way through, and you've got that burnt orange kind of reddish brown color G10, and then a thinner layer of black, and then alternating layers of really thin black and yellow, or dark green and yellow, actually, not black, it's dark green, and lots of different layers there. You can see how the handle is thinner here, it gets thicker in the middle, and then comes back thinner again. So that swell helps make it comfortable in the hand. And when you look at it this way, you can tell that it's got a certain thickness here, and it just slowly, ever so slowly, gets thicker until it starts curving back, and it's at its deepest dimension right here from spine to belly. Nice big lanyard hole there. You could put just about anything you want through that hole to tie it off, but I like how they put it right close to the end. Perfect spot for that, for those of you who like to use a lanyard on your fixed blades. On the front here, we've got a bit of a guard, which is very well made. It's a little bit hot on the edges. And, the same thing goes for just the entire knife. These edges here, and this corner here, same thing on the belly. They're softened, they're rounded off. I'd like them rounded off even more, just to make them a little softer. And this here, especially, round this down a little bit, make it a little bit thinner, just here, but on this little piece that's extending down, just to make it a little bit more comfortable in hand, with that corner of my finger there, sometimes putting pressure on it. On a reverse grip, the same kind of thing. I'd like to soften that corner there just a little bit. It's large enough, and I wouldn't want it any smaller, but it's large enough to offer resistance. So if you did hold it like this and you were to use a stabbing motion, it's highly unlikely that your hand would slip over unless you got the handle very, very slippery. But this G10's got a little bit of a texture on it. If I can get that, there you go. Hopefully you've got a high enough resolution screen that you can see the textured lines going across on this angle. And just that little bit of that texture does help give it a better grip. So I wouldn't sand this smoother at all. Leave it just like it is for the textured grip. The finish that they did, matching up the steel with the G10 here, it's a very good match, a perfect match all the way around, especially on the spine here. You slide your finger across this way. You can feel the texture difference between the steel and the G10, but it's smooth right over. Your nail doesn't catch when you slide it across. And so they did a really good job finishing that off. And then now we've got the blade here that we're looking at, full thickness, and about a third of the way down is when the distal taper starts. And what the distal taper is, I realize I've got a number of viewers on my channel who are fairly new to the knife hobby. Distal taper means where the blade's getting thinner as it's getting closer to the tip. And that starts right about here on this knife, and it's slowly getting thinner. And then the rate of it getting thinner picks up on the last third near the tip. And then we've got a fairly strong tip there. There you go. You can see that the tip is fairly thick, so it's a good, robust tip on this blade. Quite good for just about anything that you want to do. And there you can see that they put the name in thin lettering on the blade there. And you can also see the satin finish on the blade, the lines going straight down. Very, very good job of that they did from the factory. You might also notice something else right there. There's a tiny little bit of a defect right there. And that must have happened from the factory because the knife was in the sheath during shipping. And there's no way to do that kind of little bit of damage right there while it's on the sheath when the sheath has absolutely no damage at all. So the quality control on this is both very good, on the handle work that they did, and yet somebody should have noticed that tiny little spot right there on the tang of the blade. And under certain light, it's very noticeable. So what I think I'm going to do if I keep this knife is I'm going to break the corner and put a bit of a shoulder on it most of the way down. And that's simply, I'll use the scissor sharpening jig on my sharpening system to hold the knife like this, and then just use a sharpening stone just to knock off the corner. And that will get rid of that, and it'll make it look like it's a design feature. So we've got a nice plunge, full flat grind, nice sweeping belly. almost imperceptible amount of recurve. So if you don't like recurve knives, yeah, don't put this thing down because of that reason. It's going to be perfectly normal sharpening, just like a regular straight blade knife. It's just ever so tiny. And the sharpener's choil here is a little too small for the size of the knife. They didn't make it come out to the end of the plunge where the thickness of the blade ends. And I can show you. If the sharpener's choil would have come up to my fingernail right there, just an extra, not even 1/8 of an inch, that would have remedied that issue. Jimping on the spine of the blade, it's nice and aggressive. They used a nice deep cut to the jimping there. And it does provide extra grip, nice texture for your thumb to not slide around. They did a really good job with that. I just wish they would have brought the texture, the jimping down a little bit, but it looks like they probably added it after they assembled the knife, and so they had to terminate right there because there's no way to do it up there without also cutting into the G10. So there you go. Now, before I get into talking about the measurements and stuff, the grinding that they did on this job, the final grinding for the cutting edge, they did a terrible job. So I've got another video that's going to come out maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, or the day after that, on how to sharpen a knife that's been ground terribly, especially with a knife that's been ground two different angles. Like this side was ground at under 20 degrees, like closer to 19 degrees, and is it that? Sorry, I have to double check which side was which again. Now this side, the side that says Desert Fox, it was sharpened at around 19 degrees, and this side here was over 30 degrees. It's very, very different. And so that creates some challenges with sharpening, and I'll make a video on how to do that. So now that I've warned you about that, let's put our little symbol down out here, and let's talk about the dimensions on this knife. The cutting edge, so tip to the sharpener's choil, 14.1 centimeters, 5.55 inches. So yeah, 5.5 inch blade here. The blade length from the tip to the closest spot on the G10 is 13.7 centimeters, 5.4 inches. Because it's sweeping back here, that's how you can get 5.55 this way. The blade thickness is 5 millimeters. That's 0.197, so basically 1/5 of an inch thick. It's a good chunky blade. The blade depth, it's biggest right here by this belly, and that is 3.44 centimeters, 1.36 inches. The thickness of the edge behind the grind, it's more than I wish. It's 0.88 millimeters, that's 1/32, 0.0345 inches thick. That's a little bit too thick. I wish that it was thinner. Instead of being 0.5 millimeter thick, I would like it to be 0.65, 0.7, and it's 0.88. So it is thicker, but not by a huge margin. I've already talked about the angles, 19.1 and 31.9. That's a huge difference. What's that, 21.8 degrees difference? No, 22.8 degrees difference. That's a huge difference. That's like if you're supposed to be straight like this, that is one side's 19 and the other side's 32. You can see how odd that is. It's just not how it should be. They should be the same. And how do you fix that? Watch my other video coming up soon. Handle. The handle length is 12.8 centimeters. That's 5.04 inches. The handle thickness right here at the swollen area is 2.31 centimeters. That's 0.91 of an inch. Yeah, it's 0.91 of an inch thick here. This is for bigger hands. Small lady hands, boy hands, it's not going to work. The handle depth, it's largest right down here. 2.8, 1.1 inches, 2.8 centimeters, 1.1 inches. The grip area between my thumbs is 9.5 centimeters, 3.75 inches. And the total length of this knife from tip to the end of the handle is 26.6 centimeters, just under 10.5 inches long. So it's a good size knife for, if you want, I wasn't going to do labels, for a survival knife type of knife situation. for a budget person, somebody who's got limited funds, of course. How much is the cost? Well, let me do the weight first. The weight is 291 grams, 10¼ ounces. You add in the sheath, and it is 361 grams, 12.75 ounces. So yes, this is only 2½ ounces for the sheath. That's not bad. Not bad at all. Now let's talk about how much this knife costs. The price for it at the store where I've got it, and the link that I've got for it, is $52.86 in American dollars. So almost 53 American dollars for this knife. So yeah, it is cheap, but it's not free. And it does have some issues. So you need to consider that when you're making your choice if you want to get it. Fit and finish quality, well, if I was talking about the handle, I'd say awesome. If I was talking about the blade, I'd say a fair bit less than awesome. Combined, it's fairly close to average because they did such a great job on the handle. It's just fairly close to average. I really do like the color work that they did with the different G10 here. They could have just slapped on a single color G10 handle and that would have been fine. But they went and did more to give this thing some style and stuff. I'd like the handle to be just a little bit smaller in every way. And I'd like a micarta option. That'd be kind of cool. And for the sheath, I'd like a nice Kydex option. But those aren't what this is, and it is what it is, and so that's what you're getting for this price. The pros, this jimping's very good. It's a strong blade, a nice and strong tip here. It's not going to break easily. Full flat grind that I really like. It's fairly comfortable. It won't take that much work to round these corners a little bit more. Do wear breathing protection when you're sanding G10 because, that stuff is nasty for your lungs. The guard is functional. I like that. And just the general feel of this knife, it fits me very, very well. And my hands are large, bordering on extra large. So anybody with large hands, large men's hands, is going to find this comfortable. And anything larger than that, you're also going to find it pretty good. So what are the cons? Terrible sharpening from the factory. It's not really a con, but the leather quality, I was hoping for something a little bit better. It's not terrible. I'm being nitpicky on this one. This damage on the spine of the blade, that shouldn't be there. They should have caught that at the factory. It just shouldn't have passed. Sharpener's 12 should have been bigger. Like, they should have been able to see that. And, it just should have been bigger. And the fact that it can't be taken apart, and yet it has screws. So if they're going to make a knife that you can't take apart, use pins that clearly show that it can't be taken apart. Because the average person, average knife guy, is not going to be able to take this apart easily. You're going to screw up these screw heads tremendously. Chances are very high, I should say. And then you might not be able to take it apart either because it's probably glued. It's probably epoxied on here. So there you go. That's the summary for this knife. If you're still looking for this, if you want this specific one, please do watch my video on sharpening first before you make that decision, because I have done a couple of things. I messed up a little bit on scratching the side of the blade here when I sharpened it. So there's condition issues. But, just send me an email at CanadianCuttingEdge@gmail.com, and I might consider it, although I might not consider it because I've input a tremendous amount of work already in sharpening this knife. And time is money. It's got value. So there you go. This is the HARNDS Desert Fox. 3 great color options for a handle. Great design, execution on the blade, less than stellar by a fair margin. And execution on the handle, a little bit above average. And for, $50 US, the sheath is about average. So thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. And everybody who likes, shares, comments, subscribes, all that good stuff. If you do leave a comment, I will read it. It might take a day or two, especially this weekend because I'm going to go visit my grandchildren. But I'll get around to it eventually. And before I go, remember guys, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.